Every year, the Tour de France attracts thousands of spectators along its course and over 1 billion viewers and listeners in 190 countries. A Barcelona-Madrid Clásico gathers 400 million fans across the globe. America's football final, the Super Bowl, surpasses all ratings with 110 million viewers. Sport has become television's #1 show. But does the world really know what goes on beyond their screens? How does the sports industry treat athletes throughout and after their careers? Today, athletes come second to the market's demands and to the law of profit. To satisfy their fans, managers, and sponsors, they face harsher training, more competitions, and an obligation to win more and more.
Beh, scusami, una società fa un investimento quando acquista un calciatore. Fa un investimento e cosa vuol dire investimento? L'investimento deve rendere.
Economics have invaded the game. In the name of show business, the pressure on players is rising.
You know, while they want the violence, there's a price that the players will pay for that violence.
In North America, football players are falling ill from the thousands of blows to the head they endure each season. In the US, more than 4,000 of them took their league to court.
Now you're just human. It's like taking a superhero and taking his suit off of him and never see it again.
Players think about right now. They don't think about 10 years down the line. They don't think about 30 years down the line.
In Italy and in France, away from the stadiums and cameras, soccer players and other athletes are reckoning with a fate far different from their dreams of victory. In Germany, children of swimmers are born with deformities. They pay the price of the state's doping schemes imposed on their parents.
Die Funktionäre wussten ja, was mit uns passiert, welche Nebenwirkungen das hatte, die ganzen Medikamente. Aber das war ihnen egal und nee, ich kann es nicht verstehen, überhaupt nicht.
Hungry for feats, records, and achievements, the sports industry has become ruthless. How did it come to this? The time when sport embodied the spirit of play has long gone. Once an activity undertaken by volunteers for fun, sport has grown into an economic sector of its own, and the competition into a flourishing industry.
Le sport profite tout d'abord à tous les acteurs économiques qui envahissent en quelque sorte les pelouses et les stades. C'est-à-dire les actionnaires, les sponsors, les équipementiers, les diffuseurs. Ce sont eux qui créent une espèce de chaîne solidaire, d'ailleurs d'intérêt économique, pour lesquels il y a une attente de retour sur investissement.
Sports are now a major economic force. 700 billion euros in global revenue, 3% of the world's trade. The equivalent to the automotive industry resting on the shoulders of just a few thousand professional athletes in each nation. Athletes are subject to increasing exposure as planetary icons of youth, achievement, and celebrity. But what price must they pay for reaching the top? How far must they go to obtain the ultimate recognition? And what happens once they step down from the podiums? Footballers, gymnasts, tennis players. Today they have enough perspective to describe the system and its consequences on their lives and health. This story begins the day their careers end.
Je veux dire, des fois, je suis jalouse, moi, des artistes qui chantent toute leur vie ou qui jouent la comédie toute leur vie. Je dis, nous, c'est nul, quoi. On n'a pas cette chance. On est obligé, à un moment donné, d'arrêter de vivre notre passion parce qu'on vieillit.
Quand tu joues contre des gamins qui ont 20, 21 ans, que toi, tu as 34, 35 ans, que ton expérience, elle parle pour toi, mais que tu t'aperçois qu'ils sautent plus haut, ils courent plus vite, ils sont plus forts, ils te font aucun cadeau. Puis surtout, tu n'arrives pas à trouver la parade. Là, tu te dis, il faut que ça se termine très vite.
So it was the Saturday, the first weekend that I was retired. I didn't have to be at anyone's track. And it was pissing wet and rain and cold outside. And I was so content and happy with myself that I don't have to get dressed and go out and be in that. And no one's making me, no one's forcing me, no one's expecting me. And that was honestly euphoria.
The very first thing I did is have a dessert. Something called a jam roly-poly, which is made with so many vile ingredients that it's untrue. But I was pining for this thing from I was like 16, and it tasted disgusting.
Je mangeais, je respirais, je dormais, gym. Tout ce que je faisais au quotidien avait un impact sur ma séance d'entraînement du lendemain. Et aujourd'hui, ça, je l'ai plus.
You're a star in most instances. You made a lot of money, and all of a sudden it dissipates, it's gone. You know, you're a regular guy now.
Die Medien sind interessiert an einem. Mit einmal bist du nicht mehr ganz so gefragt. Das ist natürlich schon ein herber Einschnitt.
C'est violent, je trouve, pour un individu. Je veux dire, un acteur qui est en haut de l'affiche et du jour au lendemain qui se retrouve à être, entre guillemets, dans un espèce de néant, c'est très, très violent.
3 Monate später saß ich heulend morgens um 7 vor allen anderen Patienten bei einem Psychiater.
C'est une petite mort, c'est-à-dire que je sens que j'ai laissé ma dépouille de gymnaste derrière moi.
Und dass das in dem Moment, wenn das beendet ist, denkt man, das Leben ist zu Ende. Das ist wie bei, wie gesagt, die große Liebe auf einmal geht, dann ist man ja auch, man glaubt das gar nicht und einige werden verrückt und bringen sich um, einige nicht nur in der Literatur, sondern im wahren Leben sogar fast.
La mort de Pierre Quinon, il fut le premier champion olympique français de saut à la perche. C'était aux Jeux olympiques de Los Angeles en 1984. Il avait pris sa retraite sportive 6 ans plus tard. Il a mis fin à ses jours hier. Il avait 49 ans.
Un grand champion de cyclisme s'est suicidé aujourd'hui, Luis Ocaña, Luis le Castillan, le Fier, Luis le Battant, vainqueur du Tour en 73.
Les funérailles du joueur de hockey Wade Billack ont eu lieu à Nashville, au Tennessee, là où il a terminé sa carrière.
Athletes are no strangers to tragic fates. The Welsh soccer player Gary Speed, American sprinter Antonio Pettigrew, a 400-meter gold medalist, Venezuelan boxer and world champion Edwin Valero, Belgian cyclist Dimitri de Fall, the list goes on.
Ils ont tout donné, ils se sont complètement... c'est l'abnégation, quoi. Ils se sont complètement vidés au profit de ce qu'on leur a demandé. Ils sont dans le mur, quoi. Donc ils ont réalisé, d'accord, et puis so what, quoi. Et ils ont perdu leur épaisseur humaine. Ils ne sont plus qu'une image, ils portent leur carapace musculaire et à l'intérieur, il n'y a rien, quoi. Il y a du vide. Mais il y a du vide qui est du néant, quoi. Et quelque part, ils passent à l'acte au niveau de la mort, c'est que, objectivement et quelque part, ils sont dans un état de mort psychique, de mort spirituelle.
There is a sort of social death as well. During their careers, athletes are pampered and constantly encircled. Around a single athlete, as many as 20 professionals intervene to improve their performance and help them recuperate from their training. Coach, trainer, physio, massage therapist, acupuncturist, doctor, shrink, nutritionist, cook, agent. A galaxy of experts dedicated to the athlete's body and success.
I loved my body. When you're training and your life is about training all the time, you look amazing. And so for me, the biggest thing I miss nowadays is, I would say would be my body.
Quando scendevo in campo a San Siro mi sentivo un gladiatore, mi sentivo uno che non aveva paura di nessuno, poteva affrontare qualsiasi avversario, non avevo paura, perché l'adrenalina di scendere in campo, le partite di Champions, le partite normali, i 70, i 40, i 50.000, i 30.000, quella è adrenalina, quella non è che vai al supermercato e la vai a comprare.
Concrètement, vous avez l'impression de voler. C'est-à-dire que quand vous mettez des petites ailes, vous avez l'impression que vous décollez du sol et que vous êtes en pleine plénitude. C'est le sentiment de bonheur absolu. C'est-à-dire que vous voulez arrêter le temps et rester juste dans cet état-là. Ne plus le quitter. Vous avez votre père qui, dans les yeux, a des étoiles. Vous avez vos amis qui sont là, tout le monde. C'est un partage, c'est un moment humain qui est extraordinaire. Et donc ça, c'est franchement... Ouais, je vois pas... Ouais, peut-être la naissance d'un enfant, mais sinon, dans la vie au quotidien, pour trouver ça, c'est quand même compliqué.
What is the price to pay for this victory? Thousands of hours of training and constant sacrifices and abstinence. Yet how few will actually know victory or attain success? To finish your career, either just short of the medals, or because of injury, or even beaten by a doped rival, it all leaves a bitter taste.
De toute façon, devant moi, au bilan, il y a eu pendant longtemps, il y a eu Griffith, Joyner, qui est décédé à 38 ans. Bon, on imagine bien que ses performances n'étaient pas claires. Et puis, il y a eu aussi Marion Jones, qui, au bout du compte, a été prise pour dopage. Je crois que c'est la chose qui est la plus sombre pour moi de ma carrière. Qu'il y ait eu ces athlètes qui, pour moi, ont triché et qui n'ont jamais été rayés des tablettes, quoi.
I have been beaten by people who were taking drugs and then later got caught, whether it be that year or the following season. I've lost medals, I've lost money. I guess part of my injuries are due to the fact that I was training to try and beat people that were taking drugs. But, you know, what can you do?
Athletes who dope often do so with the complicity of team doctors. In Italy, doped athletes run the risk of prison sentences, as do those who supply them and inject their chemicals. A former member of the Italian Anti-Doping Commission, Dario D'Ottavio, was part of a random inspection where 86 cyclists and doctors were arrested, investigated, and for some, sentenced to jail for 6 months. That was in 2001 on the Giro d'Italia. There, they found hundreds of different medications in the caravan's trunks.
Ho capito veramente che cos'era il doping. Ho avuto l'occasione di vedere che c'era addirittura al seguito del Giro d'Italia una farmacia viaggiante. Farmaci consentiti e farmaci vietati. Ma non avrei mai pensato o ipotizzato che per poter fare un certo tipo di prestazioni si dovesse far ricorso ad una medicalizzazione così spinta.
The raid loosened the grip that medicine had gained on the cyclists' bodies and performances, a biochemistry that had become essential to withstand the superhuman cadences of competition schedules.
Chi è il vero campione? Il vero campione è l'atleta, oppure il vero campione è lo staff medico, clinico, eccetera, che costruisce il nostro atleta. La medaglia a chi la diamo? La diamo all'atleta? La diamo allo staff medico? La diamo a tutte e due? Facciamo 2 podi? È avvilente, è avvilente.
Chemistry also rules the locker rooms of the world's most popular sport. A number of former soccer players suffer from cancers linked to the substances they ingested throughout their careers. This trend was revealed by Attorney General Raffaele Guarinello. In 1998, this occupational health specialist investigated the soccer world after the discovery of 281 types of medication used by the Juventus FC of Turin came to light. With the help of Panini albums, he contacted some 24,000 retired first and second division players. and discovered that 600 among them were sick and that dozens had died of suspicious causes. Gianluca De Ponti played as a center forward for some 10 clubs. Until 1986, soccer had given him his greatest joys. After his first division career, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor while working as a coach.
Qui mi manca l'osso a me, qui. Sì, ora io ho la paresi, ho la gamba sinistra, il campo visivo. Qui c'ho la formazione di Bologna dove c'ho altri, vediamo un po', si parla degli anni 77-78 e qui c'ho proprio i miei dispiaceri ancora più enormi che questo si chiamava Chiodi Stefano, era di 56, è morto una decina d'anni fa. Questo si chiama Tazio Roversi, è morto anche lui diversi anni fa. Questo è Fiorini, era quello più giovane, era di 59 e anche lui è morto in mala e pancra. Ma guardi, questo qui si chiama Giorgio Mariani, è morto da un anno a questa parte. E qui c'è Beatrice, è morto diversi anni fa. Poi c'è Rognoni, è morto di tumore. Ah, aspetta, mi dimenticavo, questo è Macchi, è morto anche lui, era il nipote di Chiarugi. Ma non posso dire 30-50 è stato un caso, no, quello non è un caso. 50 casi non esistono in un raggio di 20 anni, sono troppi, ha capito? Perciò sono convinto che qualcosa ha fatto male, non so cosa, però qualcosa ha fatto male.
70 former soccer players have died of cancer, a rate twice that of the Italian population, which could be explained by the abundance of medication in club locker rooms. Former First Division player Giovanni Ziviani testified before Judge Guardinello about doping practices during the 70s and 80s.
Questa è la famosa squadra che è arrivata seconda in Serie A, che è il Vicenza. Diciamo che il più famoso di tutti, fra virgolette, il più famoso è Paolo Rossi. Ma poi c'è tutti gli altri, tutti bravissimi, Giussi Farina, e io sono qua. Avevo 19 anni qua.
According to him, intravenous injections were common before matches.
Mi ricordo c'erano delle fiale bianche con scritto niente, dove facevano dei cocktail, dei farmaci, e l'effetto era quasi immediato. A me è capitato di giocare con una frattura, cioè per dire, a me è capitato con una distorsione al collaterale interno. Ti fidi del tuo medico, ti fidi del tuo massaggiatore, anche perché cioè quando una persona normale per guarire di una distrazione muscolare ci mette 3 settimane e tu ci metti 3 giorni o 4 giorni o 5 giorni, hai fiducia di queste persone e poi non sei in grado ancora di capire se lo fanno per il tuo bene o se lo fanno per il loro bene, cioè non sei in grado ancora di capire.
Other former players have also admitted to having had injections. At AS Saint-Étienne in the 70s, at Olympique de Marseille in the 90s, and in the 1986 German World Cup team. Yet it only seems to have triggered as many cancers and vascular diseases in the Italians. However, the federal investigation could not uncover the contents of those vials. Is it still possible to be a high-performing athlete without depending on doctors and meds?
I took a lot of anti-inflammatories, more than the body should have, and I have an ulcer now and problems with stomach and all sorts of stuff because of the amount of anti-inflammatories that I took.
On a souvent cette conception que les athlètes sont en santé et sont équilibrés. Or, pour être un athlète qui va gagner des médailles, il y a un déséquilibre qui est nécessaire. C'est-à-dire qu'on s'entraîne plus que le corps est capable d'en prendre. On souffre aussi plus que le corps est capable d'en prendre.
Pendant Wimbledon, quand je me levais la nuit, en fait, je pouvais pas poser le talon par terre. J'avais une telle tendinite dans mon Achille que mon pied restait équin. C'était pas facile. Après, c'était l'épaule, le bas du dos, les hanches, à peu près tout, les abdominaux.
And it is torture because you push your body to a brink that is not humanly right to push your body to, right? So you'll see athletes throwing up, vomiting, going through all means to try and recover so they can wake up the next day and do that torture thing all over again.
Obliged to train harder and longer. Subjected to heavier competition calendars, athletes suffer in a way that is seldom known by the public.
Wenn du dauerhaft Wettkampf und Spiele hast und gar keine Regeneration hast, ist das einfach für den Athleten, aber auch für die Sportart und für die Qualität nicht förderlich. Und ich glaube, wir hatten das mal ausgerechnet, in einem Olympiajahr hatten wir knapp 100 Spiele. Und wenn man das mal rechnet, wie viele Tage das Jahr hat und man möchte sich noch entsprechend darauf vorbereiten, ist das schon sehr grenzwertig. Und das muss man wirklich gut überlegen, inwieweit man einer Sportart, aber vor allen Dingen auch den Athleten das zumutet. Du bist ja in dieser Mühle irgendwo drin, du bist vertraglich gebunden, also machst du einfach immer weiter.
L'engrenage, il est simple, c'est que c'est un gros transfert, c'est beaucoup d'argent dépensé, c'est un joueur qui est fatigué, blessé, et les journalistes mettent un peu la pression pour que justement il y ait du rendement par rapport à l'investissement fait. Donc on ne te laisse pas le temps de vraiment te soigner à 100%. Et tu reviens trop vite, tu n'es pas prêt et inéluctablement tu te blesses, c'est la logique.
Encore une fois, la récompense est telle au bout que vous acceptez tout pour y arriver.
In North America, the after effects of sports careers have become a matter of public health.
Fields it at the 48, and White barely. Has just made a 60-yard field goal. Vince Young takes her to the house because he's the showstopper.
Despite wearing helmets and shoulder pads, a professional football player receives 1,000 to 1,500 blows to the head every season. These impacts often induce concussions.
Une commotion, c'est un coup sur la tête ou alors une onde de choc qui est propagée par exemple du thorax à la tête, si on a pris un grand coup sur le thorax, lors d'un plaquage par exemple, dans le football américain ou dans le rugby. Et à ce moment-là, le cerveau est projeté derrière en avant, et c'est ce déplacement du cerveau qui peut être responsable d'une commotion qui va se caractériser par des troubles neurologiques.
These neurological disorders can manifest themselves as problems with vision, vertigo, or memory loss, all of which can worsen after retirement. In the long run, athletes run a higher risk of contracting Alzheimer's, dementia, or Parkinson's disease.
Si on joue avec un cerveau fragilisé, on risque de le payer très cher plus tard.
Until 2009, the National Football League denied the long-term seriousness of these continual impacts. Yet these brain traumas have been the source of many severe depressions and even suicides.
Funeral services will be held Saturday for an NFL veteran, Dave Dorson of the Chicago Bears, a Super Bowl champion who committed suicide last week, leaving behind notes and text messages to his family as a last request that his brain be examined after his death. Dorson suspected he suffered from brain damage from his football years.
Kyle Turley also decided to donate his brain to science. A former offensive tackle for the New Orleans Saints, Turley contemplated suicide a few months ago. Since then, his wife has kept their firearm hidden in a safe.
You can tell when it's not a good day. Some days are good, some days are bad. Some days, you don't know who you're waking up next to, because who knows what could have started. It could have been watching something the night before and having bright lights in his face. That can alter everything. It can bring on headaches. Before he got on his medicine, it could bring on vertigo, which was, that's something we always had to be careful of.
Today, Kyle Turley accuses team doctors of playing the manager's interests against those of the players.
We weren't told what was happening and that we needed to rest. I mean, I was knocked unconscious. They had to wake me up off the field with multiple ammonia caps before I popped up. And then, they released me to my wife after I had no idea where I was. And I lost probably about a good 8 to 10 hours of my life. I don't remember any of it. And my wife, was terrified, and they just gave me to her. And luckily, we ran into a friend on the other team in the locker room or in the stadium, and he told me to go to have somebody take me to the hospital.
Only after he left the field in 2007 did he establish the link between his ailing health and his former job.
After my career was over, it was really bad, and then put me in the hospital a couple times. I had some seizures and some other things, and then finally the discussion started to come up with, non-football doctors that, how many head injuries have you had? Now I talk to a lot of my teammates, and we talk about these stories, and they're like, I've had that happen too. I've had that happen too. And yeah, it's a common story now when I have the opportunity to reconnect with teammates. But, when we played, we weren't told, they knew, which was why they got the lawsuit against them and all that.
Today, Turley and over 4,000 former players who are suffering from similar symptoms are demanding compensation from the National Football League in order to cover their medical costs.
It has been proven in many cases over the National Football League's existence that the doctors do not have the best interest of the player at heart. And unfortunately, they are protected under the collective bargaining agreement from any litigation, any malpractice. A player cannot sue an employee of the club under the collective bargaining agreement that our union negotiated. If you go even try to get a second opinion, they'll cut you.
Not long after its inception in the 1920s, did the NFL start fearing the consequences of head trauma on its players. In 1994, an internal study sponsored by the NFL on the dangers of concussions was muzzled in order to protect a sport that attracts 110 million viewers on the night of the Super Bowl, making it the highest-rated program on American television.
I think when I played back in the 70s and into the 80s, I was very fortunate to have played for the New York Giants, because the Giants were a team that was family owned. And so, now it's a bottom line business where the football team is a part of the group of assets of an individual or several individuals. And so most fans look at it as a sport. But I think the big difference between then and now with me is It's no longer a sport. It really is a business.
More than 4,500 former players sued the NFL for failing to protect them from devastating head trauma. To settle, the NFL will pay $765 million.
$765 million to treat the after effects of the concussions. But the courts then judged the amount to be insufficient, so they repealed the agreement. Scientists have indeed found a link between concussions and depression, making the number of plaintiffs very likely to multiply. Lily Hazrati is a neuropathologist. She autopsies the brains of former athletes bequeathed before their suicide or donated by their family. Over the last decade, dozens of brains have been studied by North American researchers.
C'est un cerveau de sportif, c'est un joueur de football. Après sa retraite de la vie sportive, il a commencé vers l'âge de 50 ans à avoir des problèmes neurologiques.
In order to discover the cause of the disease, she'll have to inspect the deepest regions of the brain.
En regardant le cerveau sans histoire clinique, c'est que je peux dire que ce cerveau est atteint d'une sorte de dégénérescence du cerveau. Je vois que le pigment est beaucoup moins prononcé dans cette région qui s'appelle la substance noire. Et donc ça indique qu'il y a probablement une importante perte cellulaire à ce niveau-là.
This cellular loss could explain the incidence of depression in many athletes.
La dépression, souvent, n'était pas... On le voyait isolé, par exemple, de leur carrière de boxeur ou leur carrière en sport et de leur commotion cérébrale. On pensait que c'était deux choses différentes, que ce n'était pas relié. Mais de plus en plus, il y a l'idée que probablement c'est une suite de ces traumas qu'ils ont eu au cerveau. Donc, la première présentation peut être vraiment des changements de comportement, de la violence chez certains, un mauvais jugement, des problèmes vraiment psychiatriques comme la dépression ou la maniaco-dépression, la psychose, des choses comme ça.
And also suicidal tendencies. The researcher is now going to analyze tissue samples taken from an athlete who committed suicide in 2011.
Cette fois, c'est une personne plus jeune, 32 ans, cette fois-ci joueur de hockey. C'était un bagarreur, et donc vraiment il s'engageait à faire beaucoup de bagarres, beaucoup de points, et il en recevait aussi. Et il est mort par suicide.
3 hockey players were found dead in less than 6 months. Derek Bugard, Rick Rypien, Wade Belak. What they had in common, they all held the fighter's position. It's hockey's most violent job, one where players receive many blows to the head.
Ce que je vois, c'est que c'est dans les régions superficielles du cortex cérébral. J'ai des neurones qui sont remplis de tau.
This is a normal neuron. And in red, a neuron filled with tau protein. It's a diseased cell. After suffering repeated concussions, the tau protein present in neurons deteriorates, which disrupts the functioning of the nervous system.
Cette image, on peut la voir dans plusieurs maladies neurodégénératives qui progressent avec le temps. Et un des exemples, c'est vraiment l'encéphalopathie chronique traumatique.
This chronic traumatic encephalopathy is therefore the leading cause of depression and suicide among these players who suffered repeated blows to the head. The time has come for players and managers to acknowledge their risks.
Le sportif n'a pas envie d'entendre parler de pathologies futures, telles que les commotions. Quand on parle à un sportif, qu'on lui dit qu'il risque ça à long terme, il n'a pas envie de l'entendre. Il n'a pas envie de l'entendre parce que ce qui l'intéresse, lui, c'est d'aller sur le terrain ou c'est de monter sur le ring et d'être le plus performant possible.
What would you do for $1 million? For me, there are certain things I was willing to accept as far as, hazards of the occupation. Pains, injuries, things of that nature that come along with it. So I was willing to accept it to a degree, and here I sit.
In Italy, soccer is also afflicted by a neurodegenerative disease. Mauricio Vaccino suffers from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. ALS is an incurable disease. Once an up-and-coming player from Milan, he's been slowly losing control of his limbs over the last 20 years.
Quella la famosa foto dove mi hanno premiato come migliore giocatore nel Milan. Questo è la squadra del Novara dove perdemmo il campionato per un punto.
The former midfielder had once hoped to emulate the career of his idol, Platini, whom he'd met long ago during a friendly.
Ero molto attratto da Platini e quindi ho avuto l'opportunità di incontrare sia lui che Maradona.
In 1993, while playing in third division, his disease was diagnosed by a neurologist.
Chiesto se potevo ancora giocare a calcio. Lui mi ha risposto, è seccato in modo molto duro, che sarei finito su una sedia a rotelle. Sapere che tra un po' non potrò più mangiare con la bocca né muovermi, è molto frustrante.
Italian soccer players contract this disease at 10 times the rate of the average Italian population. For this, there is a scientific explanation.
Ci sono degli studi anche recenti fatti al Mario Negri in cui effettivamente i microtraumi ripetuti sulla colonna cervicale si ripetono spesso come causa scatenante della malattia, sono spesso trovati correlati.
In soccer, these micro impacts may come from headers, and the abuse of medications could be an aggravating factor.
Tutta la categoria dei farmaci analgesici e antinfiammatori, ecco, questo sì, molti di loro riferiscono di averli assunti per non sentire male, per non avere i crampi, questo. Però possono aver assunti a grosse dosi, potrebbero anche aver in qualche modo influenzato la malattia.
50 Italian soccer players have died from ALS, on average 10 years after retirement. The most famous of them was a former star of Fiorentina. Stefano Borgonovo played with the illustrious Roberto Baggio. He died in June 2013.
Per Stefano Borgonovo addirittura una città intera come Firenze si strinse per una partita che fu organizzata a cui parteciparono tutti gli ex giocatori della Fiorentina con Roberto Baggio che spingeva la carrozzina di Stefano Borgonovo. Quindi io credo che no, l'affezione rimane e anzi nel vedere il proprio eroe, il proprio piccolo eroe domenicale che è a terra, che è sconfitto dalla malattia, si crea ancora di più uno stato di affetto veramente amorevole. Penso che il pubblico comunque accetti tutto questo perché vuole vedere uno spettacolo frequente, quindi vuole vedere 3 partite alla settimana e vuole assolutamente vedere un tipo di calcio che sia adeguato a quelli che sono i ritmi della società, quindi un calcio molto veloce. Esiste una generazione che credo che siano delle vittime inconsapevoli, che però sono state anche pilotate o comunque usate spesso un po' come cavie da certe società. Non tutte, ma alcune società ne hanno usate come cavie.
There are, in fact, multiple generations of victims, athletes and sometimes their children. 7 Algerian soccer players who contested the 1982 and 1986 World Cups produce mentally handicapped children. Today, they denounce the doctor who supplied them with yellow pills before and after every match. A Russian doctor schooled in Soviet doping methods. In the former German Democratic Republic, female athletes doped by the state are today 32 times more likely to miscarry than the average woman. 1 in 15 children born to them are mentally handicapped, and 10% were born with some deformity. Jutta Gottschalk is a former swimmer doped by anabolic steroids. Her daughter Karina was born blind in one eye.
Ich wurde auf dem rechten Auge mit einem grünen und grauen Star geboren. Und ich sehe auf dem Auge nur 5%, das heißt hell und dunkel. Und auf dem linken Auge habe ich eine Kurzsichtigkeit. Da der grün und graue Star sich auf den Augeninnendruck auswirkt, habe ich häufig Kopfschmerzen. Ich habe viele Operationen hinter mich gebracht, Laseroperationen, um den Augeninnendruck zu senken.
Wie Corina geboren wurde, wusste ich nicht, wo es herkam. Das war einfach nur schlimm. Aber wie ich nachher wusste, woran es liegt, das fand ich viel, viel, viel schlimmer.
Between the ages of 10 and 14, Jutta was subjected to the harsh East German training program, one that would reap 11 medals at the 1980 Olympic Games.
Also die Goldmedaille ist einmal 1979, da war ich in unserer Altersklasse Deutsche Meisterin. Also im Jahrgang 65. Und die anderen beiden, das sind eigentlich meine ersten Medaillen, wo, sage ich mal, wo das Doping schon gewirkt hat. Da habe ich einen Leistungssprung gemacht von über 5 Sekunden. Zum Anfang war ich sehr stolz drauf, aber im Nachhinein durch das Doping war es ja irgendwo ungerecht. Also
For years, Jutta had never made the link between her daughter's partial blindness and her doping past.
Ja, wie sah das Doping denn damals aus? Wie kann ich mir das vorstellen?
Wir kriegten ein kleines Töpfchen am Beckenrand und wie gesagt, da waren 10 bis 15, 20, zum Teil 20 Tabletten drin in verschiedenen Farben, durchsichtig, gelbe.
Und die konntet ihr einfach so nehmen dann, oder?
Ich habe wirklich gedacht, das sind Vitamine und dass die uns helfen, dass wir nicht krank werden, dass wir durchtrainieren können. Ich habe immer gedacht, die wollen unser Bestes. Ja, aber die wollten nur das Beste für den Staat und nicht für uns.
The vitamins were in fact oral turinabol, a powerful steroid given to 10,000 athletes, many of them minors at the time.
Ja, es war schon eigenartig. Die Muskeln, man ist praktisch explodiert, man kriegt ein breites Kreuz und die Muskeln sind gewachsen. Das war schon hart. Ich hatte kaum eine Brust. Meine Regel habe ich mit 18 erst gekriegt und dann unter Schmerzen, was ja eigentlich nicht normal ist.
Bitte Plätze einnehmen.
Zum Teil wurden wir dann auch am Tropf gelegt, Infusionen haben wir gekriegt. 2-mal im Jahr Elektroschocks. Also an den Armen und an den Beinen auch. Das war bis zur Schmerzgrenze. Gut, es gab Tage, wo ich auch keine Lust hatte. Da bin ich einfach geschwommen und habe geweint im Wasser.
Dass es eben ein Diktatursystem war, das einem ziemlich harte Erfahrung organisiert hat. Und unser Trainer war absoluter Vollalkoholiker. Er war in seinem ersten Beruf Maschinenbauer. Und so hat er die Frauenkörper behandelt. Er hat Maschinen gebaut.
Wir haben ziemlich martialische Sprungkraftübungen gemacht, wie mit einbeinig 100 Kilo springenderweise durch die Halle zu gehen. Dass das oder nicht gesund ist, hat, glaube ich, heutzutage mein Knie zu spüren bekommen.
Diese physischen Traumatisierungen in dir hocken, die loszuwerden, das ist ein sehr langer, harter Weg. Zu dir zurückzufinden, wenn da so viel reingeschlagen ist an Zugriffen und auch Missbrauch und Gewalt. Die Chemie ist reine Gewaltgeschichte.
Berlin, the year 2000, at the trial of those responsible for the state's doping regime. Manfred Ewald, the GDR's highest-ranking sports official, is tried for being an accessory to intentional bodily harm. Jutta Gottschalk is one of the many plaintiffs present. For the former athletes, the trial is almost a freak show. Catherine Menschner, another former swimmer, had 7 miscarriages. Birgit Busse, a former shot putter, had malformed genitalia. Others gave birth to children with various handicaps.
Ja, die Martina aus Halberstadt war mit, der Sohn halt eben die Klumpfüße. Dann war die Ute Krause, jetzt Krieger mit. Die hatte, ja, die litt an Depressionen. Heidi Krieger, was jetzt Andreas ist. Bei der Heidi halt eben von der Frau zum Mann, die hat sich richtig umoperieren lassen.
Heidi Krieger is this woman, once a shot put gold medalist at the 1986 European Championships. Massive doses of anabolic steroids and hormones left her with masculine traits. Here he is during the trial, after having undergone several operations to complete his gender transformation.
Wie viel haben die eigentlich gekriegt? Wie lange?
22 Monate, der Manfred Ewald.
Gefängnis, oder?
Auf Bewährung.
Ach so,
auf Bewährung.
natürlich.
Ja. Das ist enttäuschend für mich jetzt noch. Und wie gesagt, weil auch nie ein Wort der Entschuldigung gekommen ist. Das war das Mindeste, was wir Sportler erwartet hätten. So beim Prozess auch. Aber wie gesagt, da ist gar nichts gefallen. Und das ist das, was so, ja, ich sag mal, was wehtut einfach, ne?
Ich würde ihnen erstmal starke Vorwürfe machen, dass sie Kindern so etwas angetan haben. Weil in meinen Augen, das sind Schutzbefohlene und das geht gar nicht. Also das Vertrauen von Kindern so dermaßen auszunutzen, deren Gesundheit zu schädigen bis in die Zukunft und das ohne deren Wissen und das ohne das Wissen der Eltern, das ist unverantwortlich. Was in einem Menschen vorgeht, dass man so kalt und abgestumpft sein kann, dass man im Grunde Kinder und sportliche Kinder dann zu Marionetten des Staates macht.
In 2006, 184 former athletes obtained compensation from the lab that produced their anabolic steroids. Among them was the former shot putter Heidi Krieger, now Andreas Krieger. Andreas has since given back his gold medal, but his record still stands in the track and field's record books. Today, he denounces the mindset of sports bodies who have yet to annul records obtained with the aid of doping.
Was das Publikum nicht sieht, ist, dass es Eintrittsgeld für eine Show bezahlt, wo sie auch noch betrogen werden. Weil die Leistungen, die dort sind, in den Hochleistungsebenen nicht sauber sein können. Und ihr beklatscht diese Helden. Wer lässt sich hier mehr betrügen? Wer betrügt mehr, der Sportler, oder lasst ihr euch mehr betrügen?
More than 400 million viewers for a Barcelona-Madrid match, 700 million for a World Cup final, 1 billion for an Olympic Games opening ceremony. That's 1 out of 7 people on the planet. This increasing fervor is a testament to the public's denial of the many drifts corrupting sport.
Les images sportives sont tellement belles, quelque part les téléspectateurs ils déconnectent ça de tout référentiel à l'éthique et à la morale. Pour eux, c'est devenu un spectacle. Et si c'est uniquement un spectacle, alors c'est sûr qu'il y a de quoi être inquiet. À ce moment-là, il ne faut plus parer le sport de vertu comme on a pu le faire depuis un siècle. À ce moment-là, c'est une activité économique, mais une multinationale ne va pas faire référence à l'éthique et à la morale.
The game will always be around, whether I want it to be or not. The game is going to be around because there are people who want their football, and they don't want their football to be changed in any way, shape, or form. Now, there are going to be people who will continue to play football because of the incentive that's there, and that is the dollars that are being offered to the players to play.
Qu'est-ce qui a changé aujourd'hui? Les joueurs. Les joueurs ont changé aujourd'hui. Je pense qu'ils font un boulot. Le métier de footballeur, c'est plus ils font plus un sport, ils font un boulot. C'est-à-dire qu'ils sont là pour gagner de l'argent, ils ne sont pas là pour gagner des titres. Et ça, c'est triste de parler comme ça. Il faut vous dire, moi, j'en suis malade. J'en suis malade.
To achieve success, to earn money. The incentive has become so great that players stand willing to play with their health as their salaries vary with the level of success or failure.
If you're making $20 million a year, you know, you're expected to perform at a $20 million a year level. When you put a seven-figure behind someone's name, all of a sudden that's relevant. And what they do becomes relevant. There's so much money involved now, and you've got to be so finely tuned as far as your skill. There's really little room for error, because if you continue to err, there's somebody out there that can replace you.
Sometimes, like I said, there's a balance where you question, okay, how much is this race worth? Should I take a chance? And you weigh it that way. So if a race is not worth a lot of money, you don't chance it. But if it's a huge bonus or a huge incentive, yeah, it makes you think twice on, okay, maybe my Achilles is not going to be ready for another week, but the race is tomorrow and it's $50,000, it's worth a gamble. You know what I mean? So if you win medals, you get a certain amount of money. If you break records, you get a certain amount of money. If you are maimed or injured, they can take that money away from you. If you don't have a certain ranking in the world, they can cut your paycheck a certain amount.
Donc arrivée de capitaux, attente de retour sur investissement, obligation de performance. C'est la nouvelle équation du sport business de ce début du XXIe siècle. Il y a une pression terrible. Celui qui ne joue plus le jeu, autrement dit en termes de productivité, de compétitivité, il est exclu forcément. Et les passionnés de sport vont s'intéresser uniquement aux leaders de la discipline. Et du coup, un écart de 0,5% de talent mesuré par la distance, par le temps, va être amplifié en termes de revenus par des différences considérables. Il va y avoir 50 ou 100% de différence de revenus entre le premier et le deuxième, alors que pourtant leur talent est pratiquement voisin. Et c'est très spectaculaire, mais c'est comme ça, c'est le règne de l'image.
An image that today attracts brands that couldn't be further away from the ideals of sport and makes it, season after season, shed its values.
J'ai bien compris que le sportif, c'est un produit, quoi. On nous vend, on nous utilise, on se développe dans notre activité. Et après, il y a le déclin, donc forcément, ça va avec. Vous n'êtes plus utilisé de la même façon, et puis jusqu'à ce qu'on vous dise merci, c'est fini. Voilà, c'est comme ça.